On today's show, we've got over a half hour with the voice of Senators hockey, Dean Brown.
Dean tells us all about the Sens offseason, what he expects from Tim Stutzle next year, and the role of Daniel Alfredsson being the Daniel Alfredsson of the team.
We'll get into all that and more on today's Locked On Sens.
I'm Jake Sanderson.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you are listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
You're Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome! You are locked on to the Ottawa Senators, the only daily podcast covering the Sens. On the outskirts of enemy territory, I'm Ross Levitan, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. You can also follow the show on social media. We're at Sens Central on Twitter. You can find us wherever you get podcasts, including on YouTube, where we say hello and let you know that a like, comment, and subscription go a long way to helping the show grow. Today is Wednesday, July 10th, and Pilsy, pour one out for CapFriendly, the website that helped everyone inside and outside the hockey world find what players were making, what all the structures were. It's gone dark.
This is a sad day, Ross. I don't know about you, but the day was supposed to be July 5th. It goes dark. The Capitals are shutting it down. And July 5th came around and it was still working. And in my mind, I was like, maybe they're just not going to shut it down. Maybe they're just going to keep it. Maybe the Caps were like, no, it's good. Leave it up. And I was using it the last couple days, really taking it in. Ross, I even screenshotted the Sens CapFriendly page. So I got all those numbers ready. But man, what a sad day today, turning to CapFriendly. I don't know about you, Ross, but it's literally been the same tab on my laptop for years. That same third tab that I have open is always CapFriendly. I've got it bookmarked, and it was a sad time being like, all right, that's it. Gotta unbookmark it. Gotta delete that tab for the first time. And for me and you, two guys that aren't math guys, not having that tool around, it's gonna be tough. It sucks.
So puckpedia.com is going to do its best to fill the void. Next man up, and that's what it's going to be. It was Cap Geek before that, I believe. But CapFriendly's been a staple for the last 8+ years, and it's going to be tough. Imagine us without CapFriendly during the Sens rebuild, where they didn't have a single player signed beyond 2 years for parts of it. We're like, what is going on? It is a tough day, but again, as the market opens, somebody has to step up, and Puckpedia seems like they're pouring a lot of resources in there, and we like seeing at the bottom of the Sens page who to follow. At Sens Central, at Lalim's Martian. Okay, pander to me, why don't you? So we're all in on Puckpedia, and hopefully it gives us the same inside knowledge that the team has, because we know that NHL teams use CapFriendly. So for us on the outside, being able to manipulate the cap and create rumors and trades the way that fans like to do, I think that there's always going to be a place in the market for something like this. You just hope that the backside of it is so well structured that there's no glitches or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, like, especially things like the buyout calculator, learning like
they made so much money off of me dialing in Korpisalo buyouts. You know, on Google, when you type in sites, like, you've been to this page many times. That was me with it.
Yeah, well, hey, it's a good tool. Luckily, we don't have to use that, though. Thank you, Boston. Things like learning the restricted free agent rights, like who has arb rights, who doesn't, the little intricacies that, like, no one knows all these things. Like, even like Elliot Friedman would often reference CapFriendly and be like, I learned this from CapFriendly, and they cleared things up for me. So, like, that's when you know that they're the go-to spot. And for the NHL specifically, Ross, players' contracts are such a big part of what makes a successful team and unsuccessful team. Like, it adds to the element of reality TV and like a drama series when you know how much these guys are making, what percentage of the cap is. Oh, they got to move this guy's contract to make room for this guy. Like it just adds so much that maybe the casual fan isn't interested in that. But people that are diehard fans for their team, for the league, broadcasters, people in the media, scouts, all these other people, CapFriendly was absolutely monumental to spinning the twine that is the NHL story, right? So hopefully Puckpedia can step up. I honestly hadn't used it till today, so they've now occupied that new tab. So let's see if that holds up. But shout out CapFriendly, they did amazing work.
The more things change, the more they stay the same. When you turn on your radio dial and Senators hockey is about to begin on TSN 1200, the Team 1200 back in the day, probably even an iteration before I can remember, Dean Brown has been on the call. He's synonymous with Senators hockey. Dean and Gord, one of the dynamic duos in this organization's history. And in our interview coming up, of course, I didn't ask him about who's next in the Ring of Honor because he wouldn't tell us. He's a part of the voting committee, but you and I, in our mind, he is a first ballot Ring of Honor in the Ottawa Senators whenever he hangs up the microphone. But we always love chatting with Dean, and I'm excited that we got to meet him in person, which was great. Got to spend a few beers with him, and then it's just he's got so much knowledge, so much insight, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy this interview coming up.
Oh yeah, Dean's the best, Ross. We'll during the interview, you and I will kind of give each other a look, being like, "Man, it's nuts that we get to hear these stories from Dean. Getting to sit down with him was awesome." And yeah, I agree. There certainly will be a spot in the Ring of Honor for him and Gord together. I mean, they should go the whole 9 yards. Name the broadcasting booth after them, like everything. Lay it all out for them. At least in my opinion. Is the broadcast booth named right now?
I think it is.
Is it? Okay.
I need to figure this out. And if somebody...
Because I don't want to take it... We don't talk about another man's job. We're not trying to take away another person's named booth here, but...
No. Let us know in the comments, as I can't find it on the fly here. But I want to say, maybe it's just Honored. They got that Smitty banner up there. Let us know in the comments. What's the broadcast booth named after in Ottawa? We know it's the Jack Miller Broadcast Center in Belleville, Ontario. Yep. So what is it in Ottawa? If nothing, then we have it in the bag with Dean and Gord. All right, Dean Brown, next. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, that's what brings home the winning trophy, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. You know they got it. So whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. It's that simple. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not burning cash. With all the parts you need, but at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into that MVP and bring home that W. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Check it out today, guys. eBay Motors.
Today's episode is also brought to you by Farm to Fork. Premium meat and seafood delivered right to your door in Ottawa, anywhere in Ontario, Quebec, and even to our friends up north in Nunavut. Farm to Fork is a local Ottawa company that serves only the best. I'm talking all natural, no hormones, no antibiotics, and the reviews speak for themselves. Go check them out. An average of 5.0 on Google. They are taking the next step in their business. We can announce right now that next month in July, the exact date to be determined, but you will soon be able to go and get Farm to Fork in a retail location. 1570 Carling Unit A, right in between the Diamond Storage and Corral building on Carling. So you will be able to go get your steaks, but you can also still, of course, get all the great delivery that you've come to know and love from Farm to fork. The BC sockeye salmon's great for the grill. You can get that sustainable seafood. And all of these products are flash frozen right after being on the butcher's table. So get it fresh, get it from farm to fork. You will never go back to grocery store meats. And because you're a listener of Locked On Senators, LOSP10 at checkout, that's 10% off your first purchase. We know you're going to love it. Go support local, support the pod, support farm to fork, and taste the farm to fork difference. You will never go back to grocery store meats. All right, now time for our interview with Dean Brown. All right, we now welcome a very, very, very special guest back to Locked On Senators. His 5th time on the show, if you can believe that. But for the first time, we've actually got to meet in person Dean Brown, the voice of the Ottawa Senators. Welcome back. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well, boys. Doing well. Yeah, actually, yeah. In this past season, we all hooked up in Minnesota. That was a great night. That was fun.
Yes, Sunday night in Minnesota. A lot of people say that's the epitome of an NHL lifestyle. What is it like going through the rigors of what is the 32nd season now, Dean? A lot different than when you started, I imagine.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Very different. Travel's different. Everything's different about the league now. You know what? When people ask me, is it getting easier or harder? I don't really have an answer because it's just always been my life. I've always traveled for well, not even just for work. My father was an airline pilot. And when I got into this business, I did 10 years of football before I ever did hockey. So there's a certain amount of travel for that. And then there's this, it's to be honest with you, it's more my kids. My kids, when they were in school, people would say, well, your dad's away a lot during the winter. How's that go with your dad away a lot during the wintertime? Well, they don't know any different. It's been that way their entire lives. So I don't really find it rigorous. The game, the job, it's fun, and travel is a part of that. And no one can complain about the way we travel. Very, very lucky, very fortunate the way we travel. So no one can bitch about that. So it's part of the job, and you just go do it. And there's certain things on the road that are fun, and some things that are less fun, but nothing's terrible.
Yeah, Ross and I are slowly getting into the calendar cycle of hockey season, as now we're doing this podcast for a while, so we kind of understand. It's kind of nice, though. It's similar to the school schedule, right? Like you start in the fall, you finish, you have your summers off. So how's your summer been, Dean?
Summer's been pretty normal, low key. Lots of stuff to do around the house. During hockey season, it's 6 or 7 days a week. Even if there's no games, you're at practice. If you're not doing practice, you're doing other stuff that's usually hockey related. So during the season, it's 6 or 7 days a week. So in the summertime, it's all off time, and you get to all those lists that you started compiling or someone else started compiling for you, and you just start pecking away at jobs. But for me anyway, there's no immediate rush, nothing catastrophic. So you're getting the chainsaw out and cutting down things that fell down during the winter, and you're going through. We've spent 3 days ripping the garage apart and trying to clean out and throw out stuff. So you're just doing normal everyday things that people do year round. We just kind of concentrate them in the summertime, and you get some downtime. Had family here on the weekend, got more family coming next month. Sue and I are taking off for a week to go to Newfoundland next week, just to hang around, bum around. So just all the normal stuff. It's just we have a confined time to do it, whereas with a lot of that stuff, people can poke away at it year round. We just poke away at it during the summer.
And at what point, Dean, do you sit down and kind of reset? I know you're a big notes guy. You got your big book of each game. When do you kind of look ahead to next year and start jotting away?
Well, you know what? In my case, I'm never not doing that. I have an organizational depth chart that I'm always updating, so that when I do stuff like this, I don't have to remember things. It's right here. I always have it with me. And so if we're talking about players and who's where in the organization, and I'm updating that all the time. Just my habit is every day when I get up, even during the off season, get my coffee, and I come here into my office, and the first thing I do is I go to the international transactions list, and I see who has signed where in the world, who's going where, and some interesting things. Sometimes former Senators or former Ottawa guys move teams in Europe, and it's just interesting, but it's something I do. And I've already started building. Now that July 1st has rolled around, started building my templates for every team for next year. And there's no rush because I have lots of time, and I poke away at it so that when the season comes, it isn't just a crush of homework and stuff that you have to do all at once. It's more distributed. But I enjoy doing it. It's, it's kind of like, I'm sure people are asking you guys, off season, and you guys are doing this 5 days a week. Like, what are you doing? Well, if you love it, it doesn't feel like work. It's just, so I'm never not doing it. I'm always poking away at it. And when the season's on, obviously you're more into it and you're doing more defined things. But like I said, I'm always updating my lists, and I'm always keeping track of who's going where and who is signed and who hasn't and who's left to sign and all those things, and also working on templates for all the teams for next year.
Now, as fans, a big day for us in the off season that gets us excited is the drop of the schedule. Dean, for you, that must be a whole nother experience, because now you've just got your work schedule just posted there, and you can see all the trips, all the different things you're going to do. Is that a big thing for you when that comes in? Do you sit down and you're going through it and you're picking days here and envisioning what your year is going to look like? Or is it just something you're like, well, I know the days are going to come, I'm just going to deal with it as it goes?
No, you're right. It's a big thing, Brandon, because and this started a long time ago. My kids are now older; they're adults. They vote. They're citizens. It's not really the same kind of relationship. But when they're younger, when they're kids, I get to the schedule. As soon as the schedule's out, I'm on it, because at that time, so much of my life was revolved around, well, how do I weave my work schedule into the family schedule and taking kids here and doing that? And, so that was always a big thing. And even now, still the same thing. You look at it because that's what your life is going to be like. Where are you going to be? How much time do you have off at Christmas? And, like all those things that are family related. And then right after that, at the same sit down, you start to look at how many back-to-back games are there, because that's a bugaboo in the schedule. Well, last year Ottawa had the second most. I think Pittsburgh, actually, I might be wrong about that, but I think Pittsburgh had the most back-to-back games last year. Ottawa was second. So you start looking at that kind of stuff. And this year started right away, got the dates, so I knew how long the break would be for the Four Nations in February, because it's so rare that we get to have a vacation in the winter during the season. So we're already planning that, and likely going to go away with our friends for at least a week in February, just because, like I said, it's such a rare chance to get to do that. So it's all that kind of stuff. And you guys know me a little bit. You know that, and I know this about myself, I'm very anal about lists and stuff. So I can't just take the schedule and download it into my computer. I rewrite the whole thing myself, because there's other things that I want on the schedule that I use, including space to be able to write in wins and losses, and which games are on which network. So I know what TV crews are going to be there when we're doing radio, and so I basically take a little bit of time and rewrite the whole schedule myself rather than cutting and pasting, because I want to add things to it. And so I do that as a matter of habit, and I realize you don't have to, but I'm kind of anal about that kind of stuff. So it's just part of what I do. But you are right. It is it probably shouldn't be, but it tells you just what kind of a loser I am. It is a very big day in this household when the schedule drops. You're right about that.
No, there's a different L word I would associate with you, and that's legend. I mean, this is going to be your 33rd year of doing Ottawa Senators hockey from day one. It's so awesome. We're lucky to be chatting with you right now, Dean. And you mentioned on the road, you got that 9-gamer when the World Juniors takes over in Ottawa. There is the Christmas break between. You going to spend it in Edmonton or come here to Winnipeg, Dean?
Well, I'm going to spend it here because a lot of my family's coming here at that time to Ottawa, so I'm going to spend it here. So it's one of those things where that is part of the planning process. And I was thinking about Winnipeg, but one of the difficult parts about Winnipeg is my sister is there. One of my sisters is still there, and my mom is there, but my mom has advanced dementia, so she's not really a part of all that kind of stuff. Lots of friends and stuff like that are there, but the hard part is during Christmas time, your friends have family stuff to go do themselves, so they're not hanging around waiting, thinking, boy, is Dean coming back over the Christmas break so I can see him for an hour on the 23rd, so it's kind of a different kind of thing, but we'll be spending it here. But it's nice to get that much time off, because you guys well know, there's lots of times where Ottawa plays on the 23rd, you get the 24th and the 25th off, and on Boxing Day you're flying to Buffalo for a game. Like that has and does happen. So having 5 days off is great for Christmas.
Absolutely. Let's get into the team itself. What was your favorite Sens storyline this offseason, Dean?
Well, I think probably the biggest one, was the goaltending move. And, I think it was not just getting Olmark in the trade. I think it's 1A, 1B. I think, getting Korpisalo's salary off the books. I'm not going to say it was as big, but very big, because it was one of those contracts that, how many times did all of us talk about it? That's going to be a really difficult contract to move. So in one day, I think you got to give the Senators credit. In one day, you solved your getting stability and goaltending problem, and you solved your getting the other goaltending money off the books, so you're not carrying $8 or $10 or $12 million in two goaltenders, or whatever. I'm exaggerating, but you know what I mean. So I think that was a very big day, because how many times did all of us talk about the fact that there's certainly going to be changes coming, and there's things they have to address, but none greater than the goaltending. You're simply not going to have a chance to progress as a team if the goaltending was not substantially better. So I think solidifying that, I think, to me anyway, has been the biggest move. The other ones, you knew you were going to have to move along some pieces, and they wanted to change the mix. And, with Chychrun, I don't think there was anyone who thought that wasn't going to be a trade at some point, because of that contract, very tradable, number one. But number two, just the whole lefty-righty thing with Sanderson and Chabot, you just knew it wasn't working, and they had to make changes anyway. So you've got to turn that asset into something else, and that's just the way it goes. So the other ones are important, and the signings that they've had, I like the signings, especially of Amadio and Perron, getting some veterans up front, which is what they said they wanted to do, and they've gone out and they've done that. Getting Pinto done, I think, was important, although it's not as long as everybody would like. Getting Pinto done so he's on the ice for 2 years is big, but I keep going back to the fact I don't think there's anything that has happened that was bigger than the goaltending moves on one day.
Hope you're enjoying our conversation with Dino. We'll get right back to it, but first, a word from one of our favorite sponsors.
Yes, this episode is also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. I love sports. Ross loves sports. Dean loves sports. You love sports.
Scramble!
I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But look, NBA and NHL playoffs, they're done. We got MLB baseball, but the sports aren't sportsing the way I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I got to do is pull out my phone, open the FanDuel app, and dream up any bets I want when I'm in the mood. You guys know I'm a big fan of getting your future bets in. You got to diversify the portfolio, get some prop bets going in baseball, get some over-unders in baseball, some parlays. And this summer, all customers are going to be hooked up with boost or bonus daily, every single day. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
And then even from your station, TSN 1200, and just hearing Linus Ullmark, he just seems like such a calming presence that being a leader from that position, I think, is such an added benefit for a team that's really had trouble stabilizing defensively. When it rains, it pours type thing. One goal goes in, all of a sudden it's 3-4. It's gotten out of hand a few times. But Dean and Pillsy, I want to throw this number at you too, because out of the 16 players on the Sens last year that played more than 51 games, so a majority of the season, half are gone. 8 out of the top 16 skaters in time on ice have been changed out. Like, Pillsy, was that a number that you kind of expected, or was that even a little more change for you?
No, that's kind of what I expected. And the way I've kind of viewed this, and Dean, I'll toss it back to you on this, is the different approach from this new regime compared to the old one. It seems like this new regime is trying to build a team, whereas the old regime was like, okay, we got our core. Now let's just bring in some flashy star players and hope that just talent is going to prevail. Whereas it seems Steve Staios is like, well, we've got the star power. Now let's just support those stars with better support players and depth and role players. And that seems to be what they're doing. Dean, how do you think this offseason, the first real offseason for this new regime, has gone so far?
Well, until they get on the ice, none of us really knows. But they're doing, and they have done exactly what they said they wanted to do. And I think one of the other things that I really like about this in trying to create stability is there's nothing that's been done that was reactive. This guy's gone, so we got to replace him today and do it with a bad deal, or none of that. None of that has gone into this. This has been a long process of evaluating and now going about executing what your game plan is for, rebuilding and retooling this team to change it. And the thing too is it's not just at the NHL level. That's what we concentrate on. But, if you look at this team, they have dramatically changed the mix in Belleville at a number of positions. And if you look at probably the biggest single area, you mentioned the raw number, which is a big number. But you do have to remember that teams that win, every team on average in this league, rosters change 20% a year. This is well above that. But I agree with Brandon that with what was happening and what the new regime was coming in with, you knew it was going to be more than average, and it has been. But this team on defense, I think that's probably where the focus is going to be, because the top four is clearly set now. The bottom three, because you're going to carry at least 7, but you have to have 10 guys really who can play in the NHL. In today's NHL, you have to have 10 guys available in your organization, and there's been a massive amount of change organizationally. Lassie Thompson is gone now. Larson's gone. Brandstrom's gone. Chikrin's gone. Hetherington has signed in San Diego. So guys that you have called up and used at the NHL level before, or have been part of your top 6 already, there's been change. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this team when they get injuries now, because it's going to happen, absolutely. But players who you knew would be guys who are next are either here now, and they're considered to be guys who are going to be part of the today. And of course, I'm talking about Clevin and probably JBD, I'm sure, and Hamonic is still here. But when you get injuries, we saw Matt and Paolo last year, and he played well. And we saw Gannett, and he played well. And, I don't know anything about Jeremy Davies or Philip Ruse or some of the new guys they've signed, but these are guys who've also played in the league. So that's part of the change here. Players that we've been used to seeing come up when there's injuries, it's going to be different guys now, and we'll all have to look and see what that is.
And I think one of the biggest changes that often gets overlooked just because there's so much excitement about the players changing, this is a whole new coaching staff. Dean, how do you think the Senators did in their coaching hires? Like, do you think that they found the right guy and found the right assistants to support him to take that next step? Or from what you know around the league and all your connections, how do you feel about Travis Green being the next head coach for the Ottawa Senators?
Well, number one, I don't know, because I don't know how they'll be as a staff, because a staff, like a team, some of them know each other, some of them don't, and they all bring different skill sets, and that's the reason that they're here. But like anything else, you don't know what the chemistry is going to be, and you don't know what the environment's going to be until you get into it and see how they perform. I don't know Travis Green other than when he was a player, and having been around when he's been interviewed a couple of times. I don't know him, but from everybody that I talk to, the number one thing they start with when they talk about Travis Green is accountability. And a couple of guys said to me, it's interesting. They said, I'm not sure Travis would have appreciated being treated and asked questions and been as demanding when he was a player as he is as a coach. In other words, I'm not sure that he would have enjoyed a coach like him coaching himself.
Yeah.
But again, I don't know that, but I've had a number of people tell me that he's very big on everybody's part of the same group. There's no sacred cows, which I think everybody likes to hear. That everybody likes to know that, that doesn't mean that everybody's ice time is going to be the same. It's not a democracy. It's, but I think everybody likes to know that, everybody's going to be treated the same, and that everybody's going to be accountable. I think everybody likes that. And the players who haven't faced that in the past, they probably don't like it all that much, because who doesn't like getting to do what you want to do when you want to do it? But so we'll see how that goes. But I'm anxious to see how this whole thing evolves too, because it, like this roster, is also going to be an evolving thing. And I find that exciting to watch. Change is not to be feared. Change is to be expected. So, when you're not winning in this league, there's going to be changes. And now we all get to see how those changes grow and what they turn into.
The one constant, I guess, too, Ben Sexton will be back, but Daniel Alfredsson staying on board. Was that something that, based on how you saw from afar, how he was kind of rolling in after coming in December, that's something you kind of expected that he'd want to be back next season?
I didn't know. I have to be honest. I really didn't know, Ross, because a lot of time, and it's not that they're lazy. Don't get me wrong. It's not that they're lazy, but in my experience, former players really have no clue how much work it is being a coach, how many hours it is being a coach, how much time you spend breaking down film, getting meetings organized. When players have a day off, the Coaches Association is not a union. The players have mandatory days off. The coaches don't. So lots of times when the players are at home doing whatever they're doing, the coaches are still at the office doing their thing. And you just never know, which players are willing to live that lifestyle, because it's a ton of time. It's a huge commitment. And I'm not certain that Alfie would be as enthused about it, and he's enthused about it. I'm not sure he'd be as enthused about it if his kids were still young, but his kids are now grown up and off doing things and stuff like that. So he has more time. But he really dug into it. And I think Alfie was a bit surprised too, how much he enjoyed it. But, after the season was over, I respect the fact that he wanted to, meet with BB and find out if this is something they wanted to continue to do. And he had to look back and think, is this one I want to keep doing? Because it is a huge commitment. It's not just showing up at the rink and blowing a whistle. So it's a good thing, because there's lots of former players who find out very quickly, you know what, that's not for me. I'm not digging putting in 70. My family's not digging me putting 70, 80 hours a week. And it's just that lifestyle's not for me. So he knows what the lifestyle is now, and he dug into it. He was all in. He was not peripheral. And his family is with him on that. So I think it's good. I think it's good for him and his family. But I got to say, I wasn't positive, because even when you're talking to Alfie, and I've known him a long time, and we have very frank discussions, it's really good, and he's open with Gord and I. But Alfie's always one of those guys where you never know what Alfie really thinks. Alfie's Alfie, so you never know. And he's going to do exactly what he wants to do. He's not going to be swayed by anybody else. He is very strong-minded and very strong-willed about what he wants to do and how he wants to do it.
Yeah, Ross and I always say, just let Daniel Alfredsson be the Daniel Alfredsson of the Ottawa Senators. You don't need to give him a title. You don't need to tell him he needs to be here doing this day for this long or whatever. Just let him do what he wants. It's amazing just to have him around for the players too.
You know what, guys, really, if you see the dynamic at practice, the value of Daniel, I think, is not just that he can run a drill or that he's Daniel Alfredsson, or guys. It's skating around, tooling around before practice, and a guy will come up to him, and you'll see Daniel showing him for a minute about how to protect the puck with your hip when you're turning the corner on a defenseman. Little tiny thing like that. How he talks to guys about their sticks. Well, the lie of your stick, and you can see him out there talking, and Daniel's very much a lie and angle guy on your stick, and defenseman's stick should be different than forwards. And you'll see him out there talking, and it's all those, it's an accumulation of all those tiny little things. Brady spent a lot of time with him last year on puck protection, and when I'm turning my body, and where do I, and Alfie's spending time before and after practice with all the guys with little things like that. Not the big things, but all the little tiny things. And I remember several times sitting in the stands, some of the players, including guys like Sanderson, who were playing keep away after practice with Danielson. It's a kid's game, but it's probably one of the best little games that he always played with guys, and especially the guys who are considered quote unquote lower skilled. It improves their stick skills. It improves their anticipation. Chris Neal used to spend hours playing keep away with Alfie, and it made Chris Neal a better player. So not any great big huge thing. Alfie does this. Alfie does a million little things that make every player a better player in many little ways. And I personally think that's probably his greatest value. You're right. I agree with you. He doesn't need to be in charge of the power play or the penalty kill or in charge of this to have a big impact on this team. Being Alfie and doing those little things, that is being Alfie. That is what he does. That is what he is an expert at. And there's no player that's not going to listen to him. You're sitting there getting a small tip about an important thing from a Hall of Famer. Even if you weren't old enough to watch him play in his prime, you know who's in the Hall of Fame. No one gets there by accident. So I totally agree with you that the being Alfie thing is the most important thing.
Yeah, I mean, we even saw that with Vancouver adding Adam Foote and Sergei Gonchar to their staff. It just adds that level of, whoa, these guys know what they're doing. They've been there. They've done that, and demand that level of respect. I'm not going to ask you for a prediction, Dean. That would be far too rude, but I think we're all in agreement.
Far too wrong, far too often. That's probably the other part of it, Ross.
Hey, well, you're welcome on this show then.
Yeah, you're very welcome on this show. But one thing's for sure, Tim Stützle needs to be healthy and needs to be scoring well over 20 goals, 18 goals next season. Where do you think the biggest room for growth is for this young player, who many forget is still only 22 years old?
I think the biggest room for growth for him is just maturity, both in his game and as a person. As you mentioned, he's a very young guy, and it's already gotten better. The way you're treated in the league is oftentimes a reflection of your reactions to the game. And, constantly being upset about officiating and not getting calls, he's a high skill player. He's going to get fouled a lot. You have to be able to walk away from some of that. And he's gotten a lot better. But you're going to get more calls from the officials the less you complain about the ones you don't get. Number one. Number two, he's gotten better, but still sometimes he can be too individualistic. And that's not because he's a selfish player. That's because he wants to make things happen. In that way, he's kind of like Alfie. Alfie oftentimes was very prone to that. I'm just going to go and do it myself, because he had the confidence to try and go do it himself. But Alfie was a better player later in his career when he did less of that and was more about being inclusive. And I think Tim Stutzle will be the same thing. I think last year we saw a one-off that we will never see again. His power play numbers will never be that low again, ever in his career. We saw some things anomalies we will never see from him again.
One goal?
Yeah, one goal.
Like in San Jose, of all places, against the last place team.
I know. It's crazy. It's crazy. So when you've got the highest skill guy on your team and he gets one power play goal and he's on every power play, it's crazy. It's crazy. We'll never see that again. But I think the most important thing isn't anything massive or, a huge thing. I think the biggest thing, the most important thing for Tim Stutzle is to just keep maturing as a player and maturing as a person. And both of those things are going to make him better as a player. And I think the other thing too is I think he is one of the guys in this team that could benefit the most with having, a couple of older guys up there who he plays with on a regular basis. I think a guy like David Perron could be a very big influence on him, because then it's not just all this falling on Claude Giroux, amongst the forwards, because so much of that fell on Claude. And it's not that he can't handle it, but you have to have more than one veteran voice who's talking in a kid's ear. And Perron is a different kind of guy than Claude Giroux. Giroux can help him with so many skill things. But when you're out on the ice and you're not out there with Brady or Drake Batherson or, some of the more physical players, if somebody gives Stutzle one in the ear, David Perron, as Artem Zub found out last year, even though he didn't deserve it, David Perron is going to go through your helmet to get to you. So having that on the ice with you as a player, if he plays a little bit more with Tim Stutzle, which he may well, that's another thing that gets added to help Tim Stutzle move ahead. And that's really the reason why they wanted to have more veteran guys up front, other than just Claude, to provide that insulation for guys like Stutzle and Pinto. And there's going to be more. Believe it or not, Ridley Gregg needs some protection. He's a feisty guy, but he's a small guy and he's not an old guy, So it's not just for Tim Stutzle. Those couple of those additions of those veteran guys, Amadio and Perron especially, those are important to the makeup of the soup. As we've said a million times, if you want to build a championship soup, it can't all be carrots or potatoes or beef. It's got to be a mix of all of them. And so if you're trying to make the right soup, you need all those different vegetables.
And you need some noodles in there too. I'm a big fan of noodle soup.
Noodles too.
Dean, tell me if this is dumb fan meathead thought or if there's actually something to it. Because we know that the guys like Perron, like Brady, they're always going to be there to stand up for their teammates. I've been saying that Tim Stutzle in the first 10 games next season, if someone takes a run at Brady, he needs to hit the eject button and stand up for him and show the whole team like, hey, we're all in this fight together going forward. On a scale of 0 to meathead, how close am I to the top?
Well, it all depends on what your meatheads. By the way, all of us have a bit of both in us. All of us do. Let's be honest. But you have to decide where on your meathead scale are you expecting Tim to drop the gloves and try and smoke somebody? Because I'm not sure if I expect that. That's really not and has never been a part of his game. But is he going to go after guys? Is he going to get a guy in the corner? Is he going to give him one? If he's going to give him a little cross check in the kidneys, is he going to get the gloves up in the face? I think we will see more of that. And part of it, I think, is that he's getting in his career to the sick and tired portion of it. Like I said, he's got to stop throwing his head back when he doesn't get a call. And other teams read all that body language and they feed off it. They try to make him more frustrated. And last year, near the end of the season, we started to see him pushing back more on guys. And I think you're right. I think we will see more of that. I'm not sure we're ever going to see Tim drop the gloves and go toe to toe with anybody, because that's really not in his wheelhouse. But stranger things have happened.
Like Jake Sanderson did with Matthew Tkachuk. He answered the bell.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I'm not going to rule it out, but I don't consider it to be a full meathead question, because I think we've been seeing him edging towards that kind of stuff.
That beats a great question, eh, Pills?
Yes, absolutely. Ross is trying to get everyone on that train with him. Final question for me, Dean. Ross and I look back at last season and we're like, burn the tape. We didn't like that season of the Ottawa Senators show. We don't want to watch any of those episodes ever again. No moments, no nothing. But as a guy like you who's in the trenches and is along with the team, I'm sure each season has certain moments that stick out to you. So final question for me, Dean, what is the one moment from that terrible, forgettable season for us that sticks out to you that you kind of want to shine some light on?
Well, when I look at last season, there's more than enough bad to look at. Really felt bad for Josh Norris. I realize that we're in a very fortunate situation. We get to spend a lot of time with the players, and Josh is a guy that you wish for. This is an outstanding person, and you want things to go well for him. So going through another shoulder injury, that, I felt so bad for him, because I know everything he went through, and getting back to playing again, and this is the third one now. And the stuff that people don't talk about enough is emotionally and mentally what those players go through. And he's admitted that he had some struggles, and nobody wants to cut players slack in that area. Well, if he's healthy enough to play, put him back on the ice. Well, his shoulder's healthy enough to come back, but his head's not there yet. And some people just don't get that. But that's a real thing. And, he went through that last year. So I felt really bad about that. I felt really bad for Forsberg and Korpisalo, because, again, great guys, and the intention was not there to have a crap season, but they both had crap seasons. They just did. And there's a lot of reasons for that, not just their own. Defensively, there was too many inner slot chances there. You start going through some of the analytics, and there was too many other areas of the Ottawa game that let them down as goaltenders. But at the end of the day, still there were not nearly enough saves, and I felt bad with them because, good guys, really good guys, but it wasn't there. So you had a bunch of those, and on the other side of the coin, a lot of times it was the personal stuff. How much Drake Batherson was, really supportive and really excited about how his sister May was going through her last year of college, and would she be able to play in the new women's league? When would she have and she did get drafted, and so all that kind of stuff. And Claude Giroux and his kids, because they're always at the rink, and you see videos and stuff that his wife puts out, and how big a part of his life and the team's life. They're always around. Like it's and the guys love them. Gavin is more popular than Claude is in the locker room.
He's a star.
Claude can be a bit of a curmudgeon sometimes, but everybody loves Gavin. There's no better videos for the Senators than the ones that Gavin's in.
Yeah.
So the stuff like that, and Brady getting engaged, and and now he's married, and they're going to have their first child this year. So it's all those kinds of stories and all those kinds of things. There weren't enough good ones, but the good ones were good. And to me, it's less about how many goals the guy got. Brady had another strong year despite the team not being very good, and other guys got a chance to play and come up, and that's good. But the good stuff for me, it ends up being the stuff that I think back and I go, that was a good moment. Are almost all personal life things, not hockey things.
Yeah, for us, it was beating the crap out of our rivals over and over again. What was it? 4-0 against Montreal, 2-0-1 against Detroit, or 2-1, 3-1 against Detroit, and then of course the Ridley goal against Toronto. Yeah. So at least you had some moments against your rival teams. But
I'm more soft and gushy. You guys are just kind of savage, mean-spirited guys.
And, Dean. We're not hiding it. Come on.
And you openly admit it. You openly admit it.
That's the first part, is acceptance, and then we'll deal with the fallout from there. Dean, we really appreciate you jumping on with us, a true friend of the show, and don't think you're getting off the hot seat. We'll have you back on in September and really put some predictions to test. But always appreciate your time. Have a great rest of your summer, and we always look forward to doing these down the road.
Anytime, boys, anytime.
All right, Ross, thank you very much to Dean Brown for joining us. Always love hearing from our guy Dean over at TSN. You can hear him on the call for any Ottawa Senators game. Been here since day one. Ross, I loved him telling us, we asked him to confirm how many years he's been doing Sens games, and he's like, I don't know, since the very first day they started. I've always been doing it. So that's classic. And Ross, it's been a great episode. Do you have any final thoughts?
Wow, thanks for asking, Pillsy.
No worries. Good question, eh?
Fantastic. Great question. Great flow. Love to hear it. The vibes are high. Thank goodness Sen's got a goalie. I'm still rewatching that Linus Ullmark first day video. It felt like my first day at school, watching him enjoy and meet everybody around the rink. Needed an Alfie cameo, but I digress. As Linus Ullmark has made his way to Ottawa, my final thoughts is actually about the players who are training back at home. We know Nick Jensen's a Minnesota guy. The Beauty League starts up tonight. It's a pro 3-on-3 league, and the rosters are pretty loaded. There's some really good players that take part in this, and they did a draft for the rosters this season. And wouldn't you know it, the two Senators who are in this event, if you want to call it that, or league, I should say, are actually on the same team.
Nice.
Vinny Lettieri drafted the roster for Walzer, I'm assuming just a sponsor. And not only is it Nick Jensen, but Jacob Bernard Docker will be making an appearance in the Beauty League. And it's a big summer for JBD. I'm going to be really curious to see if he comes into camp, because I'm sure he's heard that Senators would like to add another depth veteran on the blue line. He's like, hey, look at me, man. I'm on a 1-year deal, cheap, just on over $800,000. Like, I can be that guy for you, but he's going to have to go out there and make very positive plays with the puck before I think that the fans are going to be willing to give it to him. But he's played a ton of hockey already, as Puckpedia's doing me dirty already. You can't get his stats on the same page as the contract. That's tough.
We'll work on that.
But I know that he's played a lot of games to the point where he's not a young rookie anymore like a Clevin would be coming up. He's a guy who is almost in that Eric Brandstrom spot from before, where it's like, what are you going to be at the NHL level now that you've made the jump to be an everydayer? So I think that that's a good move for him to be playing. And why not have a veteran defenseman who he should be modeling his game after as a guy who he's going to get to see on the ice every weekend, pretty much.
Yeah, that's a good mentor for JBD for sure. And Ross, just to add to that story, like, his name has been rumored in the trade market all summer long, even before it seems like the Sens were looking to move on from him. So you've got a right-hand shot defenseman being brought in Jensen. You've got your name rumored to be shipped out, and people kind of expected them to move on from Travis Hamonic, whether it was a trade, buyout, or what have you. They kept him around too. So clearly the Ottawa Senators haven't kind of kept his spot warm and cozy. So this is a big offseason for him to get bigger, stronger, faster, smarter, what have you, and show the Sens right out of training camp that he's the guy to be on that bottom pair.
And there is actually a drop-down menu at Puckpedia. I can do his stats per season, courtesy of Elite Prospects, but we'll just have to have both tabs open because they don't show the total. We know that he played 72 games last year, 19 the year before, 8 the year before, 5 the year before that. So parts of 4 seasons, but really just established himself last year as an everyday NHLer. So we'll have lots more to discuss about the Senators offseason as stories come up throughout the summer. Tomorrow, we're going to be back to our Sens Central Citizen segment. Reach out on YouTube in the comments if you want to be a part of the show, and we'll get going a schedule for the rest of the summer. We want to do it about once a week. So those are my final thoughts. Pilsy, you got any?
Yes, I do have a final thought. I'm prepared today. Happy trails to our guy, Igor Sokolov. He signed a 1-year, 2-way contract with the Utah Hockey Club. So
did you notice it's the exact same AHL salary as Jan Jenik? Like, he and Jan Jenik signed for identical contracts.
I did notice that. I wonder if they're just going to do house swaps, Ross. Remember back in the day when Ryan Johansson and Jones, what's his first name? I'm blanking on
Jones?
Seth Jones got traded 1-for-1. They met in the airport and were like, hey, we both need a place to stay. Like, you just want to stay in each other's places. I'm pretty sure they did that at least to start. I know they met in the airport. So
it's a great story, even if it's not true. I like the story.
Yeah, let's not let facts get in the way of a good story. So maybe Igor and Yan will do the same. But I'm happy, Ross, they were able to get a deal done. I was worried he was going to get traded there and they weren't going to get something figured out. So it's nice. He fresh off a wedding. Igor's just got married a little while ago. So now they know where they're going, at least for next year. So shout out Igor Sokolov getting that contract, getting that bag.
Hell yeah, he'll be on the show in the next couple of weeks as well. We're working on a fantastic guest list throughout the summer. And Ring of Honors. Any Ring of Honor suggestions, throw in the YouTube comments as well. If you don't recall, you can go check out all 10 we did last summer where all 3 of us draft. We're going to make it a Friday draft this year, I think. A nice, fun way, light way to go into the weekend. We'll get you interviews hopefully every Monday and then citizens every Wednesday. But we are 5 days a week all the way through July. And it's going to be fun, man, because there's lots to dig into this Ottawa Senators team and what else went on in the Atlantic that could affect their playoff projections. But the Athletic, at least for one, did say some good things about the Senators offseason. We'll touch on that in the next couple of days. For today, we say goodbye. Thank you so much for watching, listening, engaging with the show on Twitter at Sens Central. Thank you for watching our interviews. Yesterday, it was Oscar Pettersson. Monday, it was Gabriel Eliasson. And today, the voice of Sens hockey, Dean Brown. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. Your team every day.